clean up. I've got mess. I don't want to look unhygienic, you know. What? Hi everyone. Am I streaming? We're making a beef stew with dumplings today. There's a bit of sizzle going on. I'm browning my beef. So we had a bit of a change of plans. I was going to be doing a chicken stew as well, because I have 2 children that won't eat chicken stew for whatever reason. So I was planning on doing that, and we've had a whole chicken boiling. I went to cut into that chicken, and it seemed fine on the outside. It looked really good. And then inside, around the joints, there was some green, fluorescent green meat. So that came from Woolworths. And I'm obviously not using that chicken. So now, luckily, we had some extra beef that Matt had purchased this morning. So I'm making a bigger beef stew instead. So the beef stew is with dumplings, and I'm doing cheese dumplings with the beef stew. And it will be baked, slow cooked, and then baked in the oven later tonight. So at the moment I'm browning my beef in 2 pans because I'm making quite a lot, so I just want to get that flavour in there. So the beef is browning off beautifully to get that caramelisation and that colour going. And as soon as I've got that kind of sealed and that colour on that beef, I will move to doing the rest of the stew. Alright, so while that's cooking, I'm going to cut up some celery. So I have half a bunch of celery, and I'm just cutting that up. And so celery is a really good stew veggie. It's been washed because it adds a real deep flavour to the stew. And so I love celery because it forms a really good basis of the stew. So making stews in winter time is really, really good because it helps with vitamin and mineral intake, and it's really good for immune system function. I include the celery leaves in there, and it's just great for improving your health all around. So about to pull out some of the beef, seasoning the rest of the beef there, and that means we'll be able to get this browned in 2 batches. Alright, so I'm going to remove this one from my large cast iron pan. See that colour on that beef? It's really, really, really caramelised. Beautiful. So I'm just taking that out. And I've cut it into big chunks. So I've got a economy porterhouse steak. It's grass-fed local beef in our region here in Victoria. So that is fantastic. So let's chuck my next section in there. I just got to straighten up that pan. Doing it in batches means you get more of that caramelisation of your beef. Getting low on oil. And that will now cook up again, and we've got a really beautiful flavour running through our home. Okay, next one. Wasn't quite ready. Okay, next one. A little bit more on that one in there. Okay, so now what I'm going to be doing is taking some herbs and garlic over to Thermomix, and I'm going to be grinding them up. So I've picked a whole lot of herbs from my garden, and I'm just using those to make a combination of garlic and herb together. So I have some parsley. Parsley is used as a really great base, and I've got some cloves of garlic in there. And I just like using the Thermomix because it's quick. So I've quickly rinsed my herbs, and they grow beautifully in my garden. And I'm just ripping the stems off the parsley, chucking it in. I've got some rosemary, fresh rosemary stalks from my garden as well. All my fresh herbs come from the garden. So this is going to give it a really beautiful herbaceous taste. And we're going to leave those herbs some time, fresh thyme sprigs from the garden. And they're just going to add a real vibrant flavour. Some sage leaves, green sage leaves to that too. Lots of thyme, lots of rosemary, lots of parsley. So yummy, 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 lots of vibrant herbaceous flavours. And lots and lots of constituents there for health and wellness. So parsley is a natural diuretic, so really good for detoxification and kidney support. Sage is a cooling herb, so really good for immune system inflammation too, and any issues with problems with like pyroritis or fevers or any of those things. Sage can be really healing. It's also antibacterial, so is thyme. So wards off those flus and colds. Thyme is also a respiratory stimulant, so it can help as an expectorant if you have a cough or a cold to get rid of deep mucus in the lungs. So we have prevention really here. Well, none of us are really, touch wood, none of us are ill, but there's been a lot of sickness around. So I'm always very conscious of making sure we're not sick. So I like to cook immune boosting foods during the winter time to keep us nourished. So I've got pretty much about probably 1.8 kilos of beef here because I've trimmed the fat rinds off. So that's quite a big stew that we're making. And I'm adding in some ground salt to that. I like to really coat my beef in that salt to give it lots of flavour. And that means I don't have to over season the stew either. Okay. Hi. Who, sorry? Who? Hi, Andrew. How are ya? Thanks for joining. Sorry, we have a question and answer panel on our live, but it's not showing up, so it's probably a bit delayed. But that's okay. Technology, when it works, is wonderful. All right, so I'm going to be putting in, we're cooking it all in this really big pot here because we really want all of that flavour to be in that stew. Just taking those out so I've got more room for the non-cooked ones. So I'm going to be leaving them in there in a second. Okay, so now I'm just going to grind up our herbs and our garlic together. So I've got about 7 cloves of garlic. So you could use a mortar and pestle if you wanted to, but that is so quick, 3 seconds. And the smell is so vivacious, it's beautiful. Oh, it's just so healing already. Okay, so still browning off our beef, getting through that, that's great, lots and lots of colour. All right, so now that we've got a bit of a seal on this, nearly with these ones, just one more turn and I think we'll have that seal. I'm going to add in our onions and celery to the meat that's already in there and then add that meat back in. Okay, that is hot and needs moving. Yeah, so originally there was going to be half the amount of beef and I was going to do a beef stew and a whole chicken stew and we were going to showcase the 2 different methods. But yeah, that was very disappointing to see that chicken was not great from the inside. Okay, so now I'm going to add in my celery and my onion. I've got about 3 big onions in there and half a whole celery in there. So what will happen is when these veggies start to cook, they'll release their juices and we'll end up with lots of flavour. Hi to... I can't hear. Out of bounds. Hi, how you going? Welcome to the channel. Sorry, I can't hear. I've got lots of sizzling and that's quietly telling me things. Bit louder, honey. All right, so that's all mixing through with the beef there that we've already had. And I'm going to chuck back in our beef that we've already done with some of the juice. And I'll be moving that through as well. So then the onion and the celery have time to kind of give that base flavour to that stew. All right, and that's just going to cook down. We can see that colour of that beef coating those onions and that celery. So it's looking really, really vibrant inside there. It almost looks like a stir fry at the moment. It's not quite there. We've still got some of our other beef coming to join over here. And I'll bring that over in a sec. All right, so that's just cooking down.
The thing of what?
Work in it. I can't read it anyway. I'm too busy. Yeah, thank you. This is it is like a cauldron. This is a Solid Techniques. It's called the Bigger Pan. So it's a Australian-made bigger pan, and that was done on a project where they're crowdfunding, where he had this idea of doing like a lighter cast iron. So it's not like your iron that you'd have normally in your really heavy outdoor wear. It's really, really light, but it's, yeah, durable and strong and really, really big. So you can put it in the oven and you can make big family stews and things. So, and the other thing is veggies. Yes, we try to grow as many veggies as we can. We grow our own herbs, so all of the herbs, but the veggies I'm using are not homegrown. We have been a little bit slack with our gardening the last few months because we've been really busy working on Wheel in the World. Okay, so now I'm going to be adding in my garlic and my herbs, but I'm going to be filling this up with a bit of water because I want to deglaze the pan. So I'm just going to be putting in, it's probably about 250 mils of water into that. And so that's kind of sitting in the pan there, and it's actually moving my garlic and my herbs around. But I'm leaving some in the bottom, and I'm doing that because I'm going to be using this to make my dumplings. So I want my dumplings to be a bit coated in that herbal flavour. So we can see that juice coming through, and we've got that water from that garlic and those herbs. And I'm just mixing it through our beef, our celery and our onion. And that is very, very flavourful. The smell is beautiful with that garlic. All right, so I'm just going to stop that. I'm going to pull this beef out of here and pop it back in the pan. It just meant that I had more space to be able to brown the beef off quicker than I normally would, because normally it takes a long time in one pan. Okay, we're going to stir that through and just let that cook down a little bit. Our onions are going nice and translucent in there, so we're getting that colour come through, and our celery is softening. So we've got our simmer on a medium heat, so it's not over boiling, but it is stewing those veggies through that meat and those herbs. All right, so now I'm just going to get some beef stock, and I'm going to pop that in my pan over here that I used to brown some beef. And I'm putting about probably 150 mils in there. And I'm just deglazing the pan with that, and I'm going to add that to our stew as well. So don't want to waste all that crusty beef flavour that came from the bottom of this pan. Okay, so that one's going back in, nice and rich stock to go on top. And with that, I'm going to add the rest of the beef stock. So I had about a litre of stock. I'm going to chuck that in on top of what we already added with the veggies. And then I'm just going to let that stew down. We want the flavours to start to work through from the natural ingredients in there. And then I'll be adding in some of my sauces to give it a really nice flavour through that beef stew. And once that's all stewing down, we'll make our dumplings, and I'll show you how I do that. So that's looking fabulous. So this will sit and slow cook for the rest of the day. So this will take the rest of the day to slow cook on a really, really low simmer. And then this evening I pop it in the oven with the dumplings around it on top, kind of immersed under the fluid, and they will crisp up on top, and we'll have that for tea tonight. All right, so I'm going to start building my sauce. So easy way to do that is chuck in my mustard first. So beef and mustard are always a match made in heaven. And I'm just using a French's classic yellow mustard with no colours or preservatives in there. And I'm using about 2 tablespoons because mustard is that real tangy flavour that matches like heaven to the beef, and it really gives that stew a zing. And so you can see that coating the beef, and it smells absolutely beautiful. So this is really good for people that struggle with low iron levels. Having a big beef stew like this can help to naturally boost their iron levels. Really, really good for collagen production, secretory IgA in the gut. So fantastic for all of those things. Okay, I'm going to add some good old ketchup in there, a bit of sweetness and a bit of flavour. I'm going to add some barbecue sauce in there too. This is going to kind of build our flavour profile. Now for those, I've got about 2 tablespoons of each. I don't need to overdo my sauce. I've got lots of natural flavour in there. And then some good old Worcestershire sauce. I love the base of Worcestershire in a beef stew. Mix that in. Grab my towel. It's hot to hold those handles. And mix those flavours in. That gives it some richness. And then my next flavour that I'm going to add is some good old Vegemite. We know Vegemite is an Australian staple, and it adds just that real umami flavour to the beef. So I'm using a gluten-free Vegemite. To my stew, and I've got a big heaped teaspoon, and I'm just going to whack that in there, and that will emulsify into the stew. And so yeah, Vegemite is definitely a staple, and it adds a whole lot of flavour to any dish. Okay, so mixing that all through, getting our flavours all together, and that lump of Vegemite will emulsify into the sauce, and it will give it a real lovely yeasty umami taste. So that has all started to come together really well. I'm just going to grab a tin of tomatoes. Oh, push. My cat has banished himself to the pantry because he's a bit annoyed that we haven't fed him some of the morsels. Okay, so just 1 tin of diced tomatoes. I'm just going to get some water. I talk too much. I get before it gets dry. Okay. Mixing those tomatoes through. Because we don't want it to be like, doesn't like, oh, you don't like Vegemite. You don't have to add Vegemite. Absolutely, you don't have to. But you don't really taste, like it's not like you'll get a big hit of Vegemite when you eat this beef stew. It's not that strong. But it gives just, it's like putting in a salty type taste to it. It is an acquired taste. I have my youngest son doesn't like Vegemite either. The rest of my kids do. It's quite funny, Vegemite. Okay, a little bit more of that water with the tomato can. I just added a little bit of water. All right, so that's sitting there simmering away. I'm going to add a touch of ground black pepper to that. We have enough salt in here. I'm doing about probably a teaspoon. We have enough salt in there because I seasoned the beef really rigorously, so we don't need to add salt to the dish. And I will be adding a little bit of salt to my dumplings, which will give it more flavour as well. So I don't want it to be over salty, and a lot of our sauces have some salt in them too. Okay, and now we're going to add a big pile of vegetables. And what vegetables I've got are a big leek that I've chopped up, 3 big potatoes, 3 big carrots, the massive amount of veggies, and 2 little capsicums that I've popped in. So this stew packs a big punch when it comes to your veggies. So lots of polyphenols in there. So the colours that we're looking at are all polyphenols in our veggies. So what they do is they help our gut function. So we have a whole lot of biological markers in our gut, and we need polyphenols for them to work with our absorption and our elimination pathways. So things like short-chain fatty acids get stimulated by a good amount of polyphenols. They're also great at helping the astringent effect of the gut and supporting tight junctions, so we reduce the chances of leaky gut. Okay, so that is sitting beautifully. Now that juice of those veggies, all of those veggies, is going to come out into the stew as well, so we'll have a lot more liquid. But what I'll do is I'll let that reduce down for a little while, and then I'm going to probably add a little bit of water to that just to coat and top those veggies. But this will shrink down. This will shrink down and allow us room to plop our dumplings in. Okay, so now we're ready to start our dumplings. I'm going to let that cook down, and I'm going to close that range hood, and we're going to come over to the Thermomix, and I'm going to start my dumplings. So Matt, can you grab me some flour, honey? Sorry, I didn't have all my dumpling ingredients ready. All right, thank you. So we're going to add some unsalted butter to our dumplings. This is going to be the base of it. Thank you very much. And some baking powder, please. That's okay. All right, so butter, flour, baking powder, just because I want to have them fluff up, and a little bit of milk. You can use any non-dairy type of milk. You can use a different type of fat as well. You can use things like lard, use things like tallow to make your dumplings. You can use things if you're not into meat or you want to eat vegetarian. You can use even olive oil to make olive oil dumplings. So dumplings are a real big staple for you to use. So these are a kind of like a match made in heaven, a bit of comfort food. These are a cheese dumpling. So this is going to be, my kids love it, and it helps to crisp up around the beef on top in the oven. All right, so I'm doing about 250 grams of butter. So about half of this block here. And the butter needs to be cooled. You don't want it lukewarm when you're making dumplings. Okay, I've got no room. I'll try. Alright, I'll come over here. Sorry. I wasn't ready when we went live, guys, so I'm just trying to... What? Say what? Yeah, my husband was like, come on, go live. Just, I'm going to click it. And I was like, oh, I haven't finished on my prep, but that's okay. We can wing it. That's the whole fun about doing it this way. All right, so I've cut that in half, and I'm going to unwrap that. So unsalted butter. We just need plain good old butter in there. So you can even use coconut butter if you like. Just the creamed coconut. You can use coconut oil. You will need to change your amount because coconut oil is has a little bit more of a lower melting point. So, but it works really well. Some people like or can't have butter, especially dairy-free people that are allergic to casein protein, can't have butter. All right, so that is going to go into, I brought the breadboard over, into the Thermomix. I'm going to add those chunks of butter, and that means that that's going to sit at the bottom, and when the blades mix up, and we've got our herbs from before in there too, that will get that flavour. All right, to that I'm going to add a teaspoon of baking powder. So I use honest to goodness baking powder because it is aluminium free and I know that it's organic. So we buy it in bulk. So I am always using really good baking flour. All right, now to 250 grams of butter, I'm going to add about 500 grams of flour. So I'm going to weigh this over here in the Thermomix. And I'm going to press my scales. And I'm going to do 500 grams. Alright, and this is the Woolworths gluten-free flour that I'm using as a blend. It tends to be a little bit more porous than some of the finer ones. I don't like the White Wings or Good and Well or any of those ones because they are way too fine. Whereas the consistency of this one is almost like a normal flour. So it feels better to use in baking. All right, so I'm going to pop my Thermomix lid on without the measuring cup on. And I'm just going to mix it speed 5. So you could do this with your fingers if you wanted to. But you would probably find that you'd be there for a long, long time. So again, I like to work smart, not hard. All right, so I'm adding in... Yeah, sorry, I wasn't prepared, as I said before. Okay, so I've got some unhomogenized Jersey milk. I love using this milk because it is local to us in Gippsland, and it is a beautiful type of milk. So if you're going to be consuming dairy, you may as well make it count. So to that, I'm going to add a splash, so about probably 50 grams of milk. All right, and so we're going to just mix that through. We don't want to overdo the milk because that will make it too sloppy. So we're forming a dough with that inside the Thermomix. So you can see it all coming together. And so I'm just going to add a little splash of milk as we go. You can see that forming. Yep. And when I say a splash, I mean like a little splash. Yep, that is forming a really, really nice dough now. All right, so we're just going to have a look at that consistency. That seems like it's coming together really, really well. but I need to add my cheese. So we don't need much cheese to this. It's quite buttery. It's quite rich. So we don't need heaps of cheese. We literally just want to give it that bit of that cheesy crispness and flavour in the oven with the beef. So I'm literally adding in a small handful. So just that much to coat the top. And I'm going to mix that through. Tiny splash. Oh, sorry, I need more water. Okay. So that's coming together really, really well now. One, yep. Okay, so we got our little dough balls there. It's still feeling a little dry, so I'm just going to add a tiny bit more milk. This also depends, weirdly, when you're baking like this, it also depends on your conditions. It's quite dry in Victoria at the moment. We're about to get some rain soon. So the air is dry, so everything, you don't have that humidity to soak it up. Okay. It's getting better. Alright, so now what I'm going to do is pop it on the dough setting. So I'll turn that on, press dough, and then that will mix it up into a nice dough as though I'm doing it by hand. Okay, so if we come over to our stew, we can see how that's bubbling away and how much better that looks compared to before because we have more liquid that's come out of our veggies. So that has become so much better than it was before. And we can see that that's coating our meat and all that natural juice has started coming out of our veggies. So we've got our leeks opening up. Those leeks were really lovely and big. They were locally grown leeks, not in my backyard, but they were grown locally. And we try to get locally as much as we can because we have so many beautiful producers around here. Okay. So our dumpling dough is ready. So I'm just going to show it to you. So this is what the dough looks like. So what we're going to be doing is we're not going to put these in the stew yet, but I'm going to roll them up and I'll show you what consistency we like to use. And then in a few hours when that stew has really mixed its flavours together and the meat has softened and the veggies have softened, so probably in about 2 hours, I will add the dumplings to the stew. And then I will leave it, set it aside, and then pop it in the oven to cook with the dumplings later. Okay. So I'll just get my container because I like to keep the dumplings in the fridge so that they set and it gives them a really nice flavour profile and they actually sit in the stew a lot better when they're firm. Okay, so I'll roll my dumplings and pop them in this bowl here. So you can see all those flecks of herbs in that dumpling. So if Matt will come in and show you, but inside, no, he's good. He's working the cameras really well. So inside those dumplings, there's those flecks of green, and that's from the herbs that were in the bottom of the Thermomix. So I'm making them about the size of, I'm trying to think what that size is. It's like a large golf ball, maybe a bit larger than a golf ball is that size, because they will kind of expand in the stew as well. Okay, so they're very soft to touch, but we want to roll them so that they're fairly compact. They don't have to be a perfect shape either, but they will work beautifully in that stew. I've just turned that stew down to simmer. It smells amazing in here. So if you guys do stews at home, what are your favourite types of stews? And do you have something that you always go to when you make a stew? Because every families are different, and I think it's such a staple in so many households. I'm always curious to hear what people's go-tos are when they have their comfort food or their winter dinners. Okay. So you can smell the herb and garlic in these dumplings. So it's only going to add to that flavour. And so what I do at the end is I sprinkle some salt over the top of these. I don't actually like putting it in the dough because it softens the butter too much. And yep, so I put them in the stew after the stew has slow cooked for a couple of hours. So these will sit in the fridge. So these dumplings will go in the fridge, and then in about 2 hours or so, I will pop them in the stew, and then the stew will be ready to go in the oven a little bit later. And so they'll bake in the oven with the stew. That's why I'm cooking them in that big cauldron pot, because it's oven safe, and it means that I can have them all baked in the oven so that they'll sit on top and they'll bake beautifully. And they'll be like little kind of damper morsels with a bit of cheesy texture. But you want that stew to slow cook a bit so you got all that flavour. If you put the dumplings in too early, what will happen is the meat will be tough, veggies will be a little bit hard, but your dumplings will be cooked. So I'm not a big fan of doing it like that. And yes, you do have to cook them a bit further with the dumplings in, but they don't take long. It's about 40 minutes in the oven with the dumplings in. So after I do this, I generally clean up, and then it's set and forget time. Dinner's pretty much done. It's just popping the dumplings back in later. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So there are 6 of us for dinner. So we get 2 large dumplings each in this serve. So if I have stew left over, you can always make another batch of these, or you can even, if you do a double batch though, you won't have enough room for it to soak up the liquid. Or you can always do some little flatbreads for leftover stew, or you can make another small batch of dumplings and pop it back in the oven to reheat. There's plenty of options when it comes to these. They're really versatile. Okay. So these are my dumplings all made up. You see all that? They look like little rocks. They're kind of like little potatoes. That's what they look like. But they're they're all odd shape, but they will just expand and cook in the stew later tonight. So I'm going to pop those in the fridge, and then what I'll do is when the stew is ready tonight, I will take a photo of the outcome and I'll pop it in the comments, because this will go up as a recording and you'll be able to see the final product and how it all came together. So I'd be happy to do that so you can see, you've watched the whole process, how it looks at the end tonight. So thank you for watching. This is my beef stew with dumplings, and hopefully one day I'll get to show you my chicken stew. Maybe on Monday or something like that, I might make a chicken stew to redeem myself, because I was hoping to do that one today. But yes, that Woolies chicken was not good, not a good one. And it looked fine when I put it in the pot and I cooked it. And then I went to debone it to put the meat back in, and there was some green coloured chicken. So it was a bit scary inside the chicken. That wasn't a good thing. I was not going to risk that. But yeah, funny, it didn't have any bad smell, or it wasn't out of date or anything, so that was a bit alarming. All right, well, thanks for watching, and I look forward to sharing more with you at Will in the World. I don't have a mouse. Oh, we did have a mouse. I didn't see it.